Hey everyone, it's Heather Nichols, and I'm really excited to share the Wreathed and Joy card making kit with you today. All of the kit contents come in a vinyl zippered pouch, and the star of this kit is the Wreathed and Joy Stamp and Stencil combo set. The stamp in the set is a 6x6 red rubber, and it has the branch images for 2 different sizes of wreaths. It has smaller branches to create smaller sprigs to accent your projects, along with a J and a Y so that you can spell out the word joy with the wreaths. There are 3 stencils in the set to add the leaves and the berries to the images. The Wreathed and Joy die collection includes 3 dies, 1 to cut out the wreaths at the same time, 1 to cut out the J and the Y at the same time, and 1 that will cut out all of the little sprigs at the same time. And the last item included in the kit is the Insider's Wreathed and Joy panels. You'll get 3 each of 4 different sentiments that you can include on the inside of your cards. You'll also be able to purchase more of these panels outside of the kit. There's a few add-on products that coordinate with the kit available to purchase: the Fly Your Flag 2 die and clear combo set, the Foil It Wreathed and Joy panels, the Vintage Sprigs background stamp, and the Wreathed and Joy envelope seals. Additional supplies I used for my projects: for ink, chocolate truffle, toffee, mulled wine and cherry pop, cilantro and peapod, olive and sweet basil. I used my bitty blender brushes, pixie spray, the Frame in Frame 3 and A2 Layer Stacklets die collections, Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White chocolate truffle liquid watercolor and a water brush, and finally foam squares and 1x3 thin foam strips. I'm starting off by stamping with a stamp from the Wreathed and Joy Stamp and Stencil combo set. I'm using a 6x6 inch piece of sugar cube cardstock, and I'm setting that up in my MISTI with a little adhesive to hold it in place. I'll add the stamp and close the door of my MISTI to pick that up. I'm inking up my stamp with chocolate truffle ink. Once my stamp is all inked up, I'll close the door of the MISTI and I'll use my Just Press tool to stamp onto the cardstock. Next, let's add the leaves and the berries using the coordinating stencils. In the lower right-hand corner of the stencil, there's a product number with a -1, 2, or 3. This is the order that we recommend stenciling the designs in. So we'll start with stencil 1. I like to use pixie spray on the back of my stencils to hold them in place. I'm adding stencil number 1 over the top of the stamped images, and you'll notice there are little squares throughout the design. Those are registration marks to help you line up your stencils and your dies perfectly over the images. I'm using bitty blender brushes to apply the ink through the stencils, and on this first layer I'm starting off with Peapod ink. I'm working my blender brush in a circular motion, going both in a clockwise and counterclockwise direction. I'm adding shading with cilantro ink, and I'm adding that shading at the base of the leaves, or if the images are too small, I'm just adding the cilantro in random parts around the image just for a nice variation in color. When I'm done adding shading, I'll pull off that first stencil and we'll move on to stencil number 2. Use the registration marks to help you get everything lined up. Also use your eyes to check the images to make sure everything looks good. For this second stencil layer, I'm using sweet basil ink to lay down my base color. Then I used olive ink to add shading to the leaves, just like I did on the first layer. After I finished applying the color to the second layer, I peeled the stencil off, and as you can see, these images are really starting to come to life. I added stencil layer number 3 on top of the image, using the registration marks to line everything up, but also looking at the image as well again. This layer adds the berries, and I used cherry pop ink shaded with mulled wine ink. Removing this last stencil layer reveals the completed images. I'm super excited about how these turned out. The wreaths are just beautiful. Next, I'll cut everything out with the dies. The dies also have registration marks on them, so it's very easy to line everything up and cut everything out with one pass through your die cut machine. I went ahead and stamped, stenciled, and die cut 4 panels, so now I have lots of elements to use on my Christmas projects. I used the Vintage Sprigs background to create backgrounds for my cards. I used my MISTI to stamp the backgrounds using Toffee ink on Toffee cardstock. For sentiments for my projects, I'm using the Fly Your Flag 2 die and clear combo set. I'm setting up all of the sentiments in the set in my MISTI so that I can stamp them all at one time. Make sure you put the foam insert in to raise everything up for the clear stamps. I inked everything up with chocolate truffle ink and then closed the door of the MISTI to stamp the sentiments onto my cardstock. I cut the sentiments apart with scissors, and then I used the die from the Fly Your Flag 2 die collection to cut each of the sentiments out. Use the window on the die to center and line up your sentiments perfectly. I cut out backgrounds for my cards using one of the dies from the A2 Layer Stacklets die collection. You'll also notice that I added splatters to my backgrounds using the bleed-proof white ink and chocolate truffle liquid watercolor. To add a bit of extra detail to my backgrounds, I cut out frames using one of the dies from the Frame in Frame 3 cutting plate die collection. Let's put these cards together with all of the elements that we've created. I started off by adding the frame to the background panel. For the wreath, I wanted a bit of extra dimension, so I die cut some additional layers and adhered everything together before adhering it to my project. I did the same for the other 3 cards with the frames and the wreaths. For the cards that spell out the word joy, I added dimension to the J and the Y just like I did for the wreaths. I also centered those wreaths on the cards and then arranged the letters on either side. Next, for the sentiments, I took each of the banner strips and I folded them on the fold lines at each end to create the dimensional look. I used foam squares that I trimmed in half behind the banner piece to attach it to the card. I added each of the panels to an olive card base using the 1x3 thin foam strips. I really love this new thin foam adhesive that adds dimension without being too bulky. To finish off my cards, I embellished them with the little sprigs. I used multimedia matte to sprinkle the sprigs around the larger wreath, and then for the card that spells out the word joy, I adhered the sprigs to each end of the banner. My cards are done, and I'm so excited about how they turned out. Not only are they beautiful, but I've got a jump start on the holiday season. Not only did I finish these cards, but I took a few of the larger wreaths to create tags as well. I added holes to the tops of the wreaths along with eyelets. I threaded twine through the holes, and they are all set to tie on to holiday gifts. The Wreathed Enjoy card making kit and the other supplies that I use to create my projects can be found in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time.